All right, let's dive into something that can feel, well, super confusing in the legal world. We're going to unpack how the law deals with harm, our rights, and this tricky little thing called consent. We'll explore 3 big ideas that really draw the line between just suffering a loss and actually having your legal rights violated. Okay, let's get into it.
I mean, think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you've clearly lost out on something, but legally there was nothing you could do? Maybe a new business opens up right next to yours and suddenly your profits take a nosedive. You've definitely suffered a loss. Or flip that around. What if someone trespasses on your property but doesn't actually break anything? You've been wronged for sure, but what's the damage? This is the exact kind of puzzle the law has to sort out all the time.
And here it is. This is the absolute core of our discussion today. You see, in the eyes of the law, not all harm is treated the same. There's a huge difference between what's called damnum, that's the actual measurable damage or financial loss, and injuria, which is the violation of a legally protected right. Understanding that distinction is everything.
So, let's kick things off with our first principle. It's got one of those fancy Latin names, but trust me, the idea behind it is super important and actually pretty straightforward. This covers those situations where your rights have been violated, even if you can't prove you lost a single dime.
So, if you break it down, Injuria Sine Damnum literally just means injury without damage. This is what happens when someone steps on one of your absolute legal rights. Think your right to vote, your personal freedom, your property rights. But doing so doesn't actually cause you any tangible harm, financially or physically. The idea here is that for some rights that are just so fundamental, the violation is the injury. The law says you don't have to prove you lost money or got hurt. The act itself is, quote, actionable per se, which just means you can sue based on the violation alone. And here's the real kicker. It's not always about getting a big payout. Sometimes it's just about having the law officially say, yes, your rights were violated.
And what's wild is how far back this idea goes. The landmark case here is Ashby v. Wright, all the way from 1703. In this case, an official illegally prevented a qualified citizen from casting his vote. But here's the twist. The candidate he was going to vote for won the election anyway. So if his guy won, where's the harm, right?
Well, this quote from the judgment by Chief Justice Holt just nails it. He basically argued that what's the point of even having a right if you don't have a legal way to defend it? The court totally agreed. The injury here wasn't about the election outcome, it was about the denial of the fundamental right to vote. The law had to step in, not to compensate for a loss, but to stand up for the right itself.
Okay, so now let's flip the coin completely. What happens when you suffer very real, very tangible damage, but no actual legal right was broken? This brings us to our second big idea.
Yep, another Latin one. Damnum Sine Injuria, which means damage without legal injury. This is the kind of situation where you might suffer a massive loss. We're talking financial, material, whatever, but because the person who caused it was acting completely within their own legal rights, you've got no case.
The classic case for this goes way, way back to 1410. It's the Gloucester Grammar School case. So the plaintiff ran a school, the defendant comes along, opens a new school right nearby, charges less tuition, and, you guessed it, pulls a bunch of students away. The original school took a huge financial hit.
You'd think they'd have a case, but the court's ruling was crystal clear. No legal wrong was done. The defendant had every right to open a school. That's just lawful competition. The damage the first school suffered was real, no doubt, but it wasn't the result of a legal injury.
So this table really lays it out. With Injuria Sine Damnum, a legal right is violated, so you can take action even if there's no actual damage. But with Damnum Sine Injuria, you have very real damage, but since no legal right was broken, there's no case. It can be a tough pill to swallow, but it all comes down to where the law decides to draw that line.
Okay, now let's throw a really interesting wrench into all of this. What happens when you actually agree to the risk of being harmed? This is where our third and final principle comes into play, and it changes everything.
Volenti non fit injuria. It's a defense that basically means, to one who consents, no injury is done. Or to put it more simply, you knew what you were getting into. If you knowingly and voluntarily agree to accept a risk of harm, you generally can't turn around and sue if that harm happens.
So take the case of Hall v. Brooklands. A guy's watching a car race, a car crashes and flies into the stands, and he gets injured. Sounds like an open and shut case, right? But the court said no. They ruled that by just being there, as a spectator, he implicitly accepted the inherent risks of watching high-speed motor racing.
And we see the same logic again in Wooldridge versus Sumner. A photographer at a horse show gets a little too close to the track and is injured by a horse. And again, the court found he willingly put himself in a situation where he knew there were ordinary risks involved with the sport.
It's not just about sports either. In Padmavati v. Duganayka, some people hitched a ride in a Jeep and got into an accident. The court decided that by accepting the ride, they had voluntarily taken on the general risks that just come with traveling in a vehicle like that.
This even applies in the workplace. In ICI v. Shatwell, 2 workers deliberately ignored very clear safety regulations while they were handling explosives. When they got hurt, the court said their employer wasn't on the hook. Why? Because they knowingly broke the rules, and in doing so, consented to the danger themselves. So at this point, you might be thinking that consent is just some kind of legal get-out-of-jail-free card. But no, the law is way smarter than that. Consent has very clear and very important limits.
First off, for consent to be real, it has to be genuine. It can't be based on a lie or fraud, as we saw in cases like State of HP v. Mango Ram. For example, in Queen v. Punai, a person's consent to a snakebite was invalid because it was based on a fake promise of magical protection. Or in R v. Williams, where a singing coach tricked a student into a sexual act by calling it a medical treatment. The message is consistent. Consent that's obtained by tricking someone is not consent at all.
Consent also has to be specific. Look at the medical case of Dr. Ravindra Padmanabhan v. Lakshmi Rajan. A patient agreed to a surgery to have a fibroid removed. While she was unconscious, the doctor went ahead and also removed her uterus without ever getting her permission for that. The court found the doctor liable, ruling that consent for one thing is not a free pass to do something else entirely.
And finally, there are some lines that the law just won't let you cross, for the good of society. In the famous case of R v. Brown, a group of people consensually engaged in acts of extreme violence. The court made a massive ruling. You cannot legally consent to serious bodily harm. The law basically steps in and says some things are just against the public interest, no matter if everyone involved agrees to it.
So as you can see, these principles aren't just dry academic rules. They're all part of the law's constant struggle to perform this incredibly delicate balancing act between our individual freedoms and our collective protection.
This quote really just wraps it up perfectly. The whole idea of you knew what you were getting into only holds up when that consent is the real deal, when it's free, informed, and voluntary. The second you introduce fraud, fear, or an unlawful act into the mix, that entire defense just falls apart.
And that really leaves us with the big lingering question, doesn't it? All of these principles are trying to strike a balance between our freedom to compete, to take risks, to make our own choices, and the law's fundamental job to protect our rights and keep us safe. And figuring out where that balance lies, well, that's an ongoing challenge, and it's right at the very heart of what justice is all about.